Welcome back. If you're hearing this today, it's not by accident. Maybe you're in a season where everything around you feels silent, when prayers seem unanswered, and your heart is tired from being strong for too long. But sometimes, it's in that very silence that something sacred is happening. People often think that when God is silent, He's abandoned them. But what if that silence is His answer? What if the emptiness you're walking through isn't the end, but the beginning of something greater? Tonight, I want to take you into the deeper layers of that stillness, into that quiet place where you might finally realize God has never left you. He's simply whispering something only a heart that truly listens can hear. When every sound in life suddenly fades away and only the sigh of your soul remains, that's when the universe begins to whisper to you in the language of silence. Aries, the fire within you always longs to move, to understand, to see, to grasp. But sometimes, God chooses to love you through silence. He doesn't speak, He doesn't appear, He simply observes. And in that stillness, you begin to learn the most important lesson of all faith that doesn't rely on proof, but on the quiet knowing of the heart. There were times you asked, "Why did everything stop? Why is no one answering my prayers?" But in that silence, God was teaching you the deepest kind of trust faith that asks for no evidence. Because sometimes, when you think you've been abandoned, that's when you're actually being held in the most divine embrace, one you can't yet see. I once heard someone say, when you can't hear God's voice, it means He's busy working on your behalf. And I believe that. Because strong souls, the ones who love deeply, live honestly, and fight for light are always tested through waiting, not because they've been forgotten, but because they've been chosen. Aries, you were chosen to understand that not everything requires a reaction, not every battle needs an answer. There are moments when your greatest strength is found in being still, in being quiet, in listening to what is unseen but absolutely real. I've met many like you, warriors with burning hearts, wounded by the silence of the world. They ask me, "Why doesn't God respond?" And I told them, maybe He's speaking in another way, through a friend who shows up at the perfect time, through a look that calms your spirit, or simply through the warmth you feel in the middle of the night. Sometimes, it's those small things that carry the voice of heaven. The question isn't whether God is speaking, but whether you've become still enough to hear. The world around us is loud, the noise of social media, work, news, all pulling you away from your true self. But when God wants to reach you, He often makes everything stop. A door closes, a relationship ends, a plan falls apart, and in that empty space, you finally come face to face with yourself. That's when the Aries soul, the one that once wanted to control everything, begins to learn a new lesson: surrender. Not surrender to defeat, but surrender to a greater plan than you can imagine. To accept that some things are not meant to be controlled. And that, too, is a form of protection. Aries, if you're in that phase right now, if the world around you feels quiet to the point of fear, understand this: God's silence is not punishment. It is healing. In that quiet, He is rearranging your soul, realigning your path, preparing you for a new chapter where everything will carry deeper meaning and softer light. Believe that every pause has a purpose. Maybe He's holding you back so you won't walk through a door that isn't ready yet. Or maybe He's teaching you that true happiness isn't in the outcome, it's in the journey of learning to trust. And if you've ever felt like you're living in God's silence, I want you to know this: you are not alone. Every soul listening right now is walking beside you, breathing the same faith, resonating at the same frequency of trust. When you finally stop, when you learn to listen, you'll discover something miraculous. God was never truly silent. He simply changed the way He speaks. Maybe He's speaking through your own breath, through the tear that just fell, through the soft light of morning that touched your shoulder today. And within that silence, perhaps, He's already sending the first signs, those subtle, sacred signals that only a humble heart can feel. Sometimes, the most sacred things don't come with thunder or blinding miracles. They arrive softly, like a breeze that brushes past you, like a stranger's glance that suddenly calms your heart. A flower blooms just when you've forgotten what joy feels like. An old song plays, right when you need comfort but don't know where to find it. Those small moments, Aries, aren't random. They're how God whispers, "I'm here." I once met a woman who had lost almost everything. Her husband had passed away, her children had moved far, and she lived alone in a small house by the sea. Every evening, she'd sit on the porch, watching the sun sink into the water, feeling as if her soul was sinking with it. Then one day, as she watched the waves, she saw a seagull flying low, so low it looked like it might fall, yet it kept going, and she wept. Not because of the bird, but because she knew, in that moment, God was speaking to her. You can still keep going, even when your wings are tired. From that day on, every time she saw a bird fly by, she smiled, feeling held by an invisible love. God still sends us signs like that every day, but in the rush of life, we've forgotten how to notice them. We think He must appear through something grand, a clear voice, a prophecy, a miracle. But God doesn't need to shout to be heard. He just needs us to stop, because only in stillness can the soul hear Him. Aries, you are fire. You were born to move forward, to break boundaries, to make things happen. But sometimes that same fire makes you overlook the small miracles happening all around you. You wait for something big, not realizing that God's light might already be in a quiet morning, in a voice that soothes your heart, or in a single tear that falls and cleanses your spirit. Maybe what He's trying to teach you isn't how to run faster, but how to stand still without losing faith. When you stop fighting the current, you begin to hear the subtle signals of the universe, a gentle nudge, a fleeting thought, a coincidence too perfect to be random. All of it, part of a plan far greater than you can imagine. I believe every soul has its own language through which God speaks. For some, it's repeating numbers on a clock. For others, it's a dream that keeps returning. But for Aries, it's often the unexpected, the detours, the challenges that seem to block you, but are actually guiding you toward the light. When you learn to read that language, you no longer feel abandoned. You realize He was never silent. He was simply whispering. We live in a world that keeps pulling us away from our essence. People put their faith in data, in reason, in what they can see and measure. But sometimes, what saves a person isn't measurable at all. It's a look, an intuition, a coincidence that makes your heart tremble because something deep inside knows this isn't random. That's how God awakens your intuition, a sacred gift given to every soul but only opened by those who dare to listen. Aries, give yourself the gift of quiet moments. Don't look for miracles in the noise. Let your mind, your heart, your spirit rest. You'll be surprised how the smallest things can carry the deepest healing energy. Every breeze, every sunset, every person you meet, they're all speaking to you about love, patience, and faith in something larger than yourself. And if you're hearing these words right now, that itself is a sign that God has never left you. He just wants you to start listening, not with your ears, but with your soul. Look back at your life. How many times has He sent messages through what you once called coincidence? If there's ever been a moment when you felt His presence, share it. Because your story, however small it may seem, might be the light that helps someone else find their way out of the dark. And when your heart finally begins to hear those gentle sounds, when you start trusting the quiet signs instead of demanding proof, something begins to shift within you. Two forces inside the part of you that wants to control, and the part that's learning to surrender slowly, draw closer, ready to meet, to collide, and open the next chapter of your awakening. Inside every human being, two forces are always at play, one that longs to act, and one that quietly yearns to let go. For Aries, this tension is stronger than for anyone else. On the outside, You are fire, always moving forward, refusing to stand still. But deep within, there's a small voice, soft as a breath, whispering, "Stop. Let me do my part." And that's where the battle begins. The battle between the powerful self that wants to control life and the soul that longs to surrender to a divine plan. I used to believe that letting go was weakness, that strong people hold on, take charge, fight until they win. But life in its gentle yet unyielding way taught me something different. Letting go is the most courageous act of a mature soul. It asks you to trust what you cannot see, to hand the wheel to an invisible power far greater than logic. Aries, you were made to lead, to break limits, to prove that nothing can stop the fire inside your heart. But sometimes, that very fire is what burns you out. You push yourself too hard. You fight battles that were never meant to be fought. You try to control your destiny, not realizing that in doing so, you may lose your direction. I've seen many Aries souls live with that same fire shining bright, then burning out in exhaustion. They believe that if they stop, everything will fall apart. But the miracle is, when they finally stop, the world doesn't collapse. It simply shifts quietly, slowly, as if waiting for them to realize that God has been guiding everything all along, even when they do nothing. The moment you release control, the current of life begins to carry you to where you were meant to be. And you'll see what you once called losing control was actually deep trust. The belief that the hand of God will never let you fall. The clash between these two forces, action and surrender, is the greatest test for an Aries soul. Because you were not born to give up, but you were called to understand that sometimes true victory is found in stillness, not in struggle. Imagine a river meeting a rock. The water doesn't resist. It doesn't shout or try to break through. It simply flows around, smoothing the sharp edges, and continues its journey. In the end, it's the water, the softest thing, that triumphs over the stone, the hardest thing. That is your journey, Aries. When you learn to stop fighting what is, you don't become weaker, you become wiser. Your energy grows clearer, lighter, purer, strong like an underground stream, steady and alive. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It means moving with the grace of someone who knows that everything has its divine timing. Once you understand that, you'll stop fearing the weight. You'll stop rushing to prove yourself. You'll find peace, even in the storm, because you'll know that an unseen hand is steadying the wheel. And one day, you'll look back at your battles and realize many things you fought to keep were never meant to stay, and many things you fought against were actually gifts, disguised as challenges. If you're standing in that struggle right now, caught between the urge to control and the call to trust, know this: you are not alone. Every one of us is learning this same lesson in our own way. Share your story, Aries, because your story might be the light someone else needs to find peace in their own fight. And then, when those two forces within you finally begin to meet the fire of action and the water of faith, something miraculous begins to happen. Inside you, a new stillness is born. From what once felt like conflict, your soul begins to move inward toward understanding, toward trust, toward transformation. Pain is the teacher no one wants to meet, yet the only one who can reach the deepest part of your soul. Aries, in your life's journey, you've probably asked more than once, why is this happening to me? That question is the sigh of a soul searching for direction. But sometimes, God doesn't answer with words. He answers with silence, and with the circumstances He asks you to walk through in order to grow. When everything falls apart, we often think life is taking something from us. But in truth, in that very moment, life is giving something back, awakening. Some wounds don't come to punish, but to awaken the parts of you that have been asleep. A heart only grows deeper once it has been cracked. Light can only enter a place that has known darkness. I once met a man who came to me after losing everything: his job, his loved ones, his faith. He said, "I have nothing left." But months later, when I saw him again, his eyes shone differently. He said, "Now I understand. I didn't lose anything. I was just being taught how to see." In the ruins, he learned that pain wasn't the end of the story, it was just a comma in a sentence being rewritten. Aries, your soul is strong, but also tender. You were born to fight, but sometimes the battle isn't out there, it's within. When anger, injustice, and disappointment rise up, your instinct is to resist, to control. But the harder you fight, the more exhausted you become. And when you finally dare to look inward to face your fear, your loss, your loneliness, something miraculous happens. Pain begins to melt, and in its place, compassion grows. I believe God doesn't change our circumstances right away because He's using those very circumstances to change us. If He removed every struggle the moment we asked, we'd never discover how strong we truly are. That's why every challenge is a classroom, and only those who stay, who endure, who seek meaning in the lesson truly graduate. Nothing is random. Every tear that falls has a reason to exist. Every wound is a secret doorway leading back to your own center, and once you walk through it, you'll realize what hurt you the most also set you free from your illusions. Ask yourself, Aries, what is this trying to teach me? Maybe it's teaching you how to love without holding on. Maybe it's teaching you patience. Maybe it's teaching you forgiveness for others and for yourself. Each inner lesson is a gift, wrapped in the wrinkled paper of sorrow. When you're calm enough to unwrap it, you'll find light inside. The world teaches us to be strong, to succeed, to overcome, but the soul teaches something different: to soften, to listen, to accept. And it's within that softness, the one the world mistakes for weakness, that your truest strength is born. I've come to trust that the most broken people are often the most trustworthy ones because they've walked through darkness and still kept a small flame alive in their hearts. Pain, when seen through the eyes of gratitude, becomes the gift of awakening. When you stop blaming life, you begin to hear the voice of God in every breath. If you're in a hard season right now, don't rush to ask, "Why me?" Instead, whisper, "Please show me what you're trying to teach me." Because when you change the question, you change your destiny. And when you finally discover what the pain came to teach you, share it. Speak it out, because your story could become a mirror for someone lost in the dark. A single honest story can save a desperate soul. Aries, once you learn this art, the art of listening to the lesson within your soul begins to quiet down. The world outside might still be chaotic, but inside you, a light begins to bloom, calm, steady, unshakable. And in that still moment, you'll realize something sacred. You were never alone. Because the moment your heart opens to learn, God steps in, gentle, compassionate, protective. From the deepest classroom of your soul, another door begins to open, a door where you not only see the lesson, but also begin to feel the holy hands that have been holding you all along. There are things in life you once prayed for with all your heart, things you were sure you couldn't live without. But time passed, and you kept living, kept breathing. And one day, when you looked back, you realized something. The greatest blessings were the things God never gave you. Aries, you carry within you the spirit of a conqueror. When you want something, you want it now. When you love completely. When you believe, you hold on with all your might. But sometimes, God sees what you can't, the shadows behind the things you ask for. He knows that if He gave it to you too soon, your soul might break. He knows that what you see as a reward could, in truth, be a trap. And so, He stays silent. You think He's slow, but in reality, He's protecting you. Every delay, every closed door, every no that life gives you is His way of shielding you from something not yet ready. He isn't rejecting you, He's keeping you safe. I once met a woman who prayed endlessly for a relationship to come back. She knelt, cried, begged God for another chance, but it never happened. A year later, the man she prayed for was caught in a major life crisis that changed him completely. She told me, If God had answered that prayer, I would have been pulled into that chaos too. Now I understand. He saved me through silence. That is the essence of divine protection. It's rarely obvious. It doesn't arrive with noise or spectacle. It often comes disguised as a delay, a disappointment, a rejection. But inside it lies an unconditional love, a love that always acts in your highest good, even when you don't see it. Aries, God never lets you fight alone. You only think you're alone because sometimes He steps into the background so you can learn to trust the dark. But in every fall, there's been a hand catching you before you hit the ground. In every moment you felt lost, a quiet force was already guiding your path back into alignment. You won't always understand why things unfold the way they do. You'll see others move faster while you seem stuck. But remember, a seed must stay in the dark long enough before it can break open and grow. Light doesn't come early, because if it did, it would burn what isn't ready yet. Your life works the same way. Everything happens on its sacred timeline. I used to think life was divided into two things, what's good and what's bad. But after years of walking through both, I realized there's a third, what's not yet time. And it's that not yet that saved me from so many mistakes. When we wait and see nothing, we think we've been forgotten. But in the waiting, God is preparing the path, the people, and even your own heart, so that when the blessing arrives, you'll be strong enough to hold it. No turning point is ever the wrong road. Sometimes you're just moving slower, to avoid a cliff you can't yet see. At times, delay itself is the divine hand keeping you from falling. And when you finally understand this, you'll stop blaming life, stop resenting God, and start thanking Him for the things that never came. If you've ever realized that something not happening was actually your salvation, share that story. Because your story might help someone else, someone crying over a closed door, find faith to stand again. Aries, when you trust that an unseen hand is guiding you, you no longer fear uncertainty. You begin to see that every silence has a purpose. Every delay is a message that says you're being kept safe. And then one day, when you stop asking, why? You'll hear the voice of your soul, soft as a breeze, yet powerful enough to bring tears to your eyes. Because you'll finally understand, in all the times you thought you were lost, you were simply being led by the long, winding road of divine protection. When your heart grows still, when you stop chasing the big answers, you start to see the small lights, little pieces that once felt scattered, now falling gently into place. And within that quiet protection, as you begin to watch with new eyes, you'll start to see the hidden meaning behind it all, the truth only those who trust can ever truly see. Every tear that falls carries a story, one that only you and God truly understand. Those nights when you can't sleep, lying still in the dark, asking, why is this happening to me? In those quiet hours, an unseen hand rests gently on your heart, tender as comfort itself. You may not hear a response, but He is listening, because no cry ever disappears into nothing. Aries, you are fire, but even fire must sometimes grow small so it doesn't burn itself out. There are days when life feels like it's testing you to the edge. Plans collapse, faith wavers. Someone you love turns away. You look around and everything seems to be falling apart. But what you don't see yet is that sometimes, to rebuild a strong house, God has to tear down the old foundation. I once lost everything, my faith, my direction, even my reason to keep going. But when everything inside me broke apart, something strange happened. I began to hear a quiet voice, not from outside, but from within. It whispered, "Do not be afraid. This is not the end. This is how I'm rearranging your life." And it was true. Everything that once seemed like ruin later became the foundation of the person I am today. Aries, life is not against you. It is cooperating with your soul to teach you something you haven't yet understood. Every person who enters your story, whether they bring love or pain, is a messenger. Every event, whether it breaks you or wakes you, carries a hidden message inside it. When you slow down enough to look deeper, you begin to see that everything that once hurt you was actually guiding you toward the light. I believe peace doesn't come when life becomes easy. Peace comes when you realize that everything has a reason to exist. Pain teaches compassion, loss teaches gratitude, betrayal teaches clarity. And God's silence, it teaches you how to trust when there are no visible signs to hold on to. Think back to the last time you were in so much pain you thought you couldn't go on. And yet, here you are still standing, still breathing, still listening to these words. That means every wound you've carried had a purpose. They've made you softer, wiser, and given your heart more room for kindness. The world will keep changing, people will keep coming and going. But what remains within you, understanding, empathy, faith, that's the true wealth of the soul, the kind that can never be taken away. Look back at every moment that once brought you to your knees and ask, what did it teach me? The answer might not come right away, but one day you'll smile and say, now I understand. Aries, let your heart soften. Allow yourself to see light even in what seems darkest. Every breaking point carries an invitation, a call to go deeper into the journey of knowing yourself. Because only when you look with the eyes of the soul do you realize that every event, no matter how painful, has been leading you home, to God. If there's something in your life that once brought you great pain but now feels like a priceless gift, share it. Because your experience might become the small lamp that helps another soul find their way through the night. Aries, when you learn to uncover the hidden meaning behind things, a quiet transformation begins. You no longer live just to survive life, you begin to live to understand, to love, to forgive, to shine a little brighter each day. And in that gentle light, you realize you're no longer the same. Something new is blooming within you, silent, yet radiant, like dawn after a long night. And when you see the hidden meaning in all things, your soul begins its final journey, the journey of rebirth. A place where you no longer fear loss, because you finally know every ending is just a beginning in disguise. After every storm there comes a strange, sacred quiet. No more wind, no more thunder. Only the warmth of sunlight breaking softly through the clouds. That's the moment you realize you've walked through enough darkness to no longer fear it. Aries, after everything, you are not the same. Silence has taught you faith. Waiting has taught you humility. And pain, the very thing that once brought you to your knees, has now become your hymn of gratitude. Rebirth is not starting over from zero. It's continuing forward, but with a different heart. A heart that knows peace doesn't require everything to make sense. A heart that understands that loss isn't always punishment, sometimes it's a gift, wrapped in the disguise of struggle. When you can give thanks even for what once hurt you, you've touched the deepest layer of awakening. There's something miraculous in how God works. He never takes away without preparing something better. And He never gives something new while your heart is still full of resentment. That's why He waits until you're ready to receive life, not through fear, but through gratitude. Aries, you were once the warrior. Now, you have become the light. You no longer burn to fight, you shine to illuminate. You no longer need to prove anything to the world, because your quiet strength, your calm endurance, your gentle presence are proof enough. When the soul is reborn, you begin to see the world through different eyes. What once made you angry now makes you understand. What once made you cry now makes you smile. And those who once left you, you no longer resent them, because you see that each person was simply playing their part in God's perfect plan. Some came to love you, some came to break you, but all of them came to help you become who you are today. This is the stage where the Aries flame no longer burns from anger, but glows from love. You begin to find peace, even in unanswered questions. You stop demanding that life bend to your will, because you now know everything has already been arranged for your soul's highest good. Rebirth is never loud. It happens in quiet mornings when you wake up and realize you don't hurt as much as yesterday. And in that moment, you smile a small, gentle smile that carries a universe of understanding. You start to see light in the smallest things. A morning cup of coffee, an old song, a breeze brushing your shoulder. Each one becomes proof that life is still beautiful, still worth living, still sacred just as it was in the beginning. Aries, you have walked through the long night, and now dawn is coming. It's not only the light of the sun, it's the light within you, a light born from faith, forgiveness, and gratitude. God never wanted you to fall. He only wanted you to be reborn in the light of trust. Because when you trust, you are free. When you trust, you no longer fear loss. And when you trust, life begins to open doors you never imagined existed. Thank you, brave soul of Aries, for listening, for believing, and for choosing to keep going even when life was silent. May you find peace in what remains unanswered. And may the light of God always warm the path before you. Namaste.